All right, so as you guys know, Kevin Durant is officially a Phoenix Sun. He had his opening press conference with the team today. Let's see what he had to say.
Kevin, Nick Friedel, ESPN. Hi. How would you sum?
Nick Friedel is a guy who writes for ESPN. As he said, he writes for ESPN, but he writes a lot on the Brooklyn Nets. He covers the Brooklyn Nets, and he's been all over Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in good and bad ways since they've joined forces together in Brooklyn. So, Kevin Durant has probably seen good things written about him, bad things written about him, things that he doesn't necessarily agree with. And we know Kevin Durant's relationship with the media is shaky, to say the least. So, that's why they had that little smirk off with each other right now. Kevin Durant is very familiar with Nick.
Your time in Brooklyn. How would you sum up your time in Brooklyn?
Kevin Durant is always going to give you the real, and that's what I appreciate about Kevin Durant. That's why I'm covering his press conference, because he's actually going to give you the real. He tends to break down the game during press conferences and really show you or put you into his mind and let you see through his lens what he's seeing out there on the court. He talks a lot more X's and O's, even if it's just basic X's and O's. He talks a lot more about the game than most players are going to give you during press conferences. So I always appreciate what Durant has to say in regards to anything basketball related.
So, it was it was a lot of ups and downs, but I love the grind. So, and everybody in Brooklyn loved the grind too.
Kevin Durant is a big time gym rat. You could say what you want about Durant not working out enough, not putting enough work in the weight room. You could say what you want about Kevin Durant as a leader, as a guy who's jumped from team to team, this, that, and the third, what you think about him off the court or personality or whatever. But you can just tell looking at the things that he can do on the court, his game, his ability to hit shots from all over the floor at that size. I mean, it's extremely impressive. He's probably the most talented player. When you combine talent and size, he's probably the best, like my player ever. If you had to just create a player and you just combine that height and size with the skill set, I mean, maybe you would say Wilt Chamberlain or something, but like Kevin Durant is just, I mean, he's the Durantula. There's a reason why people were calling him a unicorn. He really is just different, and it just shows that he's a gym rat. He's a guy, when he says he loves the grind, they really love the grind. Like, I live in the Bay Area, and the thing that the media reporters would always talk about during his time in Golden State is just how early him and Steph would be at practice. Like, those are guys who really get it in, and it just shows when you're that efficient of a shooter, when you're a 40, 50, 90 caliber guy every single season, it's because you put that work in.
The family over there, they're gonna always be a part of my journey. So we didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish as far as winning the championship, just like I told him. But I enjoy the grind, and everybody there, we tried our hardest every day, regardless of what was going on in the media, what was going on with our teammates. Everybody who was in that gym, we grinded. So I love those guys. I get emotional to talk about them because that was a special 4 years of my career, coming off of Achilles, and they helped me through a lot. So I don't have anything.
And people forget just how difficult it is to come off of an Achilles injury because of Durant. Like, now we've seen Klay Thompson do it. People are doing it now. And, before Durant did it, we didn't know. We didn't know if Durant was going to come back and be the same player that he was before. And you could argue in a lot of ways, and there's statistics to show that Durant is even better now. Now, do I think he's better? I think the best basketball Durant has ever played was his last stint in Golden State when, the motion offense was kind of dwindling a little bit and teams were starting to pick up what the Warriors were putting down, and Durant had to come in, and the Warriors didn't have as much depth as they probably would have liked, and Durant had to just pretty much put the team on his back a little bit and say, hey, I'm Durant, so I'm just going to take over, and we're going to win games because we have me. And a lot of Warrior games in that final season with Durant on the team, people don't talk about it, but a lot of Warrior games were won purely off Durant just being the guy and people being like, all right, well, Durant just won them the game tonight. So I think that was the best version of Kevin Durant that we've seen before. The combination of the athleticism, him being in his prime, pre-injury, him in that Warrior system with those shooters around him. I think that's the best version of Durant that we've ever seen. Just like how you can make an argument that the best version of LeBron we've ever seen was when he went to Miami. Like when those guys, those were basically like the college stints for those guys. LeBron has called going to Miami like going to college for him. Though those stints where those guys made those stops and those destinations and linked up with some incredible players, those were probably the best versions of those guys that we've ever seen. But Durant off this injury, he is a smarter player now. He picks his spots better. He's extremely efficient. He gets his on even less shots than he used to. Like, I mean, he's just so efficient right now. Like he can just do so much with so little right now. And he's just automatic from certain spots on the floor. And it's just like so robotic. Like he can just get there and pull up and cash it. And it's just like a guarantee he's always good for it. That team was rolling. The Nets were 18-2 in their last 20 games before Durant got hurt, and they were going to win the game that he got hurt in. So, I mean, he was balling. What the team was starting to put together was special. But, of course, they didn't want to pay Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving didn't want to play unless he was getting paid. So the whole thing just fell apart. But back to Durant and him being a little emotional here, it's very understandable. I mean, his career flashed right before him, and he worked his ass off to get to where he is now. And it's like you don't even notice it. To say that you don't even really notice the difference between Durant now and back then, I mean, he's still one of the best players in the league. It's pretty remarkable.
So yeah, it was terrible how some stuff went down, but at the end of the day, I love the grind, and we all love the grind there in Brooklyn, and I wish them the best going forward. They got a bright future.
As you look back on that time, I know how much you guys wanted to win a title. Why don't you think it worked there for you guys together?
We just didn't get on the court enough. I think when you seen James, Kyrie, and myself, it was amazing basketball for 17 games though. But you need, in order for you to.
Yeah, it really is crazy how little games those guys played together. Even when you take out James Harden, Kyrie and Kevin Durant, they really didn't play that many games together. And it showed in that Boston series. Boston just has so much continuity amongst their players, amongst their different lineups that they would throw out there. Everybody was so connected on the defensive end. And they just had so many guys that could make three-pointers. Meanwhile, the Brooklyn Nets, they were kind of living and dying off mid-range jumpers, and those jumpers were contested. The math just didn't make sense. The threes were beating the twos. The threes were open. The twos were contested. The Nets just weren't going to win that series. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they're smart basketball players. Kyrie put on a show in Game 1 against Boston. That was the game for Brooklyn to steal. And when Brooklyn didn't steal that game, and then in Game 2 when Kevin Durant had a really bad performance, they just knew that they were cooked. And Durant, you know, Mike James already alluded to it before. Durant already knew that he was cooked before the series even began. They knew that they didn't stand a chance. They had this team that was just a bunch of makeshift players and putting things together, and that just wasn't going to stand against the Boston Celtics. I said before the series, Boston was going to win that series in 6. Of course, Boston swept them, but a lot of those games were closer than they appeared. And, you know, I had Boston going to the NBA Finals. Boston was a juggernaut last year, and in a lot of ways they still are this season. So you were asking a lot for Brooklyn to go up against that team. And if the Lakers were going up against that team and LeBron and AD fell short, we would hear a bunch of excuses for those guys. But since it's Kyrie and Kevin Durant and the media and the fans hate them, you hear people say, well, Kyrie and Kevin Durant were supposed to beat them, right? Like, I hear people say that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are actually better than Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Like, you hear people say that Jason Tatum is a better player than Kevin Durant. Like, that's just ridiculous. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they don't have complete offensive games. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have complete offensive games. Like, those guys are perfect on the offensive end. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum had holes in their game. Now, they're younger. They might be better conditioned. They might be better. They might move better. They might be more athletic. They might be stronger. They might work better as a unit together at teamwork. But you can't say that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are better players than Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. That's just ridiculous.
championship and be a great team. You just need more time on the floor. It's another story about why we didn't get on the floor together, but we just didn't get enough time on the floor. And those are Hall of Fame players that I learned a lot from every day. And I'm wishing them the best as well. It just didn't work out.
Hey, James, over here. This is Dave King with SB Nation. Welcome to the Valley. We're happy to have you here. I have a very short two-part question. First, what is it about Devin Booker that makes all-time greats like Chris Paul and now you want to play with him and come to the Valley and get traded to the Suns? And my second part is, when are you going to take the court?
Well, the reason why Kevin Durant and Booker can have some type of kinship with each other is because they're both guys who studied Kobe Bryant. They're both guys who studied Michael Jordan, which is basically studying the same thing. Those guys, they like playing in that type of style, you know. Booker and Kevin Durant, they love to work out of the mid-range. And this might be the best mid-range team of all time because Chris Paul is their third best mid-range shooter. And it feels like Chris Paul never misses when he gets into like the painted area or to the right of the painted area or a little bit to the left of it, but especially a little bit to the right of the painted area when he gets into the paint and then he's doing that little outside dribble step and he's like turning and firing that mid-range jumper. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about, that little elbow jumper. Chris Paul always knocks it down in the little pick and roll game. And, you know, the fifth guy on the court next to them is going to be a three-point shooter, whether it's Damian Lee, whether it's Josh Okogie or I think that's how you pronounce his name, Okogie or Okogie. It might be Torrey Craig, whoever they have out there, Terrence Ross, TJ Warren. The fifth guy out there is going to be a shooter. And you have DeAndre Ayton around the paint. I'm higher on DeAndre Ayton than most. DeAndre Ayton is also a guy who can knock down a mid-range jumper. So they're going to have four really good mid-range jump shooters there. Like four guys who you can pretty much run a little bit of offense through at all times. I mean, Booker and Kevin Durant, you can run offense through the entire time. Chris Paul, we know in the playoffs he's going to tighten up a little bit. He's a little older now. They're going to put some size on him, but he's still going to be able to get a lot going. And DeAndre Ayton, you can run a little bit of action through DeAndre Ayton as well. So the Phoenix Suns, when healthy, and health is a big if for this team, when healthy, this team has a lot going on. And it's going to be extremely difficult for any team in the Western Conference to really face them. Like, the only team that I could really see matching up well with them and taking them down would be like the Clippers. Like, you know, with Paul George and Kawhi, with Kawhi guarding Kevin Durant and with Paul George on Devin Booker, they could definitely make it interesting. You know, in the Clippers, they have a bunch of new acquisitions with Eric Gordon and Bones Highland and Mason Plumlee, a bunch of guys who look better already in their first stint with the Clippers, in their first game with the Clippers against Golden State. Those guys look better than they did with the teams that they've been on previously, especially Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon just looks happy to get the hell up out of Houston, and who can blame him? I mean, what they got going on in Houston right now is a complete joke. But the Clippers versus the Suns would be a very interesting matchup. Outside of that, I have a hard time really seeing anybody in the West messing with the Phoenix Suns. If the Phoenix Suns are healthy, they should get through everybody else in the Western Conference. And it really wouldn't be a good look if they weren't able to, because Durant's superpower is that he can fit in. Like, he's going to just fit in so smoothly. He's going to let Devin Booker be the face of the franchise. He's going to let Chris Paul be the guy who gets everybody involved, plays quarterback, is the veteran leadership, veteran presence in the locker room guy who does all the talking, this, that, and the third. Kevin Durant is just going to get in where he fits in, and where he fits in is as this immense talent that takes over the Mikal Bridges role and the Cam Johnson role, just like he came in and took that Harrison Barnes role for Golden State, and he's going to elevate that position by so much, it's going to be night and day. Like, Mikal Bridges, of course, is a better perimeter defender than Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant protects the rim better. Kevin Durant's going to rebound better. Kevin Durant's going to score better. He's going to shoot and space out better. I mean, he has higher IQ. He's going to draw so much attention. It's going to make everybody else's life easier, opposed to Bridges being a guy who gets shots based off of people making it easier for him. And I know he showed some playmaking in that game against Miami. He had a great game, but Bridges was a guy who was benefiting off of Booker and Chris Paul. KD is a guy who Booker and Chris Paul can benefit off of. So I think this is a great spot for Phoenix. I think this is a great spot for Kevin Durant. He's very shrewd in picking Phoenix. Of course, he requested a trade to Phoenix in the offseason before this season even started. He knows what he's getting into. He knows that this is a good spot for him, that they have a chance to put 5 guys out there and have a really strong starting lineup and closing lineup that can just dominate the NBA. He likes what they're doing from an ownership perspective, probably getting some new blood in there. He probably knows these guys somewhat on a personal level, has some type of connection with them. So I wouldn't be surprised, at least if he does. So I just think this is a really good fit for both parties. I think this is a great fit. Phoenix taking in Durant, and I think this is really good for Durant, finding a team that pretty much checks all the boxes that he doesn't like to really do, and he can just go in there and do what he wants to do, which is hoop. And last thing before I let the video go on, I think that Devin Booker and Chris Paul, in a lot of ways, mirror James Harden and Kyrie Irving. And I think this Suns situation is pretty much just a reflection of what Kevin Durant thought Brooklyn was going to be. The Phoenix Suns are the real version of it. You know, Brooklyn never materialized into being what Phoenix actually is, which is a point guard, a main ball handler who gets everybody involved, which is what James Harden was supposed to be. James Harden was supposed to be the Chris Paul, but James Harden was just too banged up and eventually left. Kyrie Irving was just not always available, but when Kyrie Irving is healthy, he's that elite level 2 guard who can just get his shot off at any given point in time, and that's what Devin Booker gives you, except Devin Booker is more available than Kyrie Irving is, and Devin Booker's probably more of a team player, somebody who you can rely on a little bit more than Kyrie Irving. Of course, you have Monty Williams, which is an upgrade over Steve Nash and probably an upgrade over Vaughn. We're going to have to see how Vaughn turns out. Of course, you take DeAndre Ayton, and I'm higher on Ayton than most people are, but you take DeAndre Ayton over Nicholas Claxton, at least in prior seasons. Nicholas Claxton is starting to come together now. He's really having a great season this year, but in past seasons, you would take DeAndre Ayton over Nicholas Claxton. And even looking at their bench, the Suns have a bunch of guys who can hit a shot here and there. They play defense. There's just a lot of continuity. The Nets, the guys were kind of all over the place. It was more name brand, LaMarcus Aldridge type of guys more so than it was guys who actually were going to get out there and produce for them. So, and the Nets had like Blake Griffin, names like that. So this Phoenix Suns team, in a lot of ways, they mirror what Kevin Durant was expecting the Nets to be, but it just didn't materialize at all in Brooklyn. But in Phoenix, it's right there for the taking, and it's real similar to him joining Golden State in a lot of ways. I don't think people are talking about that enough. Like him coming into this situation, it's like all boxes are checked and it's already a well-oiled machine, and he's going to be the one to take them over the top, because before this trade, I didn't have Phoenix even getting to the Western Conference Finals. But now with Kevin Durant, they're my pick to come out of the Western Conference, and I think most people would agree.
I answer the second part first. I don't know, but hopefully soon, hopefully you can feel my enthusiasm and get ready to get out there and play. But I'm gonna follow the training staff and go on the schedule that they got me on. So hopefully soon after break. But as far as Devin, it's just he has a pure game. He can score from every area of the floor with efficiency. He's athletic, but he don't really show it a lot. But he can. Like last game, he had 2 dunks. It surprised me out of nowhere. Even though I know he has that in his tool bag, but
Devin Booker is very sneaky athletic. Like he's athletic, but it's real sneaky. He doesn't rely on that, which is just the beautiful part about his game.
Such a quiet, efficient scorer, and he goes about his business on and off the court in just a mature manner. And I just wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be a part of his journey and see, how good he can get from here. And he's just one of those players that I really admire, and people are gonna be doing classes on him once he's done playing. Like you can learn so much from watching his game.
High praise from one great scorer to another.
Kevin, Shane Yellen, Forbes Sports. Welcome to the Valley. Do you think your defense still gets under-discussed, being in almost 2 decades in the NBA, and people still talk about your offense? You
can tell Kevin Durant really enjoys talking about basketball. Like he loves when these reporters are asking him basketball related questions. When you ask him the off the court stuff, or when you ask him about teammates, or you're trying to get him in trouble, basically, he doesn't want to get into any of that. But when you strictly talking hoops, Kevin Durant is one of the best people to listen to talk about basketball.
Like that gets under discussed.
And I don't normally say that about former players, because when you listen to like Magic Johnson or Shaq or some of these guys talk about basketball, Scottie Pippen, it's clear that they have agendas, and like the stuff they be saying just makes no sense. Like Paul Pierce, like the stuff these guys be saying, these former NBA players, they're so delusional, or like they're so caught up in their own agenda, or they just kind of like, you could tell that they don't be watching the games. Like Charles Barkley, Shaq, Kenny, you could tell that whole cast doesn't watch the games. They're there to talk and just give you entertainment. They're more entertainment than they are actual game analysis. Like those guys don't know what the hell is going on in the league. Like Shaq didn't even know who Rui Hachimura was. Like these guys don't know what's going on in the NBA. They're just up there talking. They're just talking heads. And a lot of these former players, they're just talking heads. They kind of just, they almost feel themselves too much. Because I was a former player, I can just watch a game and instantly know what's going on. Or I can just tap into that lens and tell you exactly what each team needs. Like these pro players, these former pro athletes, they would be the worst sports bettors, because they would just rely on the wrong things to come up with their conclusion.
How much do you think you're going to be able to contribute on that end for Monty and the staff?
I understand why. I mean, I can score the basketball. People like scoring, and defense is not the glamorous thing in the game. So, yeah, I understand why it may not be discussed as much. But my coaches and my teammates trust in me on that side of the floor, and I'm looking forward to adding that to this team. I see they do a lot of switching on some stuff, and they fight over a lot of screens. The stuff that I like to do, protect the rim, and I think I add value to a team with my defense. And like I said earlier, I think my defense always feeds into my offense. So when I'm locked in on that end, I could be better on the other side.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, losing Mikal Bridges, losing Cam Johnson, but especially Mikal Bridges, it's going to hurt them with their perimeter defense. Kevin Durant's not going to be able to make up what Mikal Bridges does on the defensive end, at least out there on the perimeter. But he's going to make up for it by providing more shot blocking, by providing more just rim protection, help side defense, things of that sort, rebounding the basketball. And it'll be interesting to see how they use Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant should primarily be used as a power forward on this team. It would be nice to see them with their fifth guy, maybe being Damian Lee sometimes being Torrey Craig. And of course, with Craig and Durant, you could kind of switch who the small forward is, who the power forward is. You could have Ross in there as the three. I think this team would be at their best if Kevin Durant is playing power forward. It allows them to switch more. It allows them to have more shooting out there on the court, be a little faster out there on the court. And I think Durant at this stage in his career is perfectly comfortable playing the four.
Kevin, to your left. Chris Mannix with Sports Illustrated. Kevin, you were 18-2, the Nets were before your injury. I want to know, what was your reaction to Kyrie's trade request? Is there any part of you disappointed that you couldn't have finished what you started?
Yeah, I was upset that we couldn't finish. I thought we would have some good momentum. We were finally building the culture that we always wanted. I felt like every game we were building our chemistry. But I didn't know what was going on with Kyrie and his situation with the organization. So I didn't really focus on that. I only focused on what we were doing on the court. And it was a blow to our team. It just took away our identity. He was a huge, huge part of what we do. His game, he's a Hall of Fame player, a great, great player that can do everything on the floor, and we relied on that. So without him, we didn't have a clear identity. So that was tough for me to stomach, and I loved playing with those guys throughout the year. I felt like we had dudes that were stepping up and doing stuff that they didn't do on their previous team. So I enjoyed everything about it, and it was tough to not finish the season, but I just tried to move forward as quickly as I can and try to figure something out for myself, but also still focus on trying to rehab and get back. So it all happened so fast, but I'm glad it worked out this way.
All right, we'll do one final question. Kevin, right here, Colin Harmon, ABC 15 Sports. You came into the league at the tail end of the 7 seconds or less era, and all that talent was homegrown on that team. Now I look at the backdrop, and 2 of the 4 up there are future Hall of Famers that chose to want to come to Phoenix. I'm curious how the
maybe the evolution and the perspective among superstar players in the league about playing in Phoenix has evolved in your time in the league?
It's definitely involved. I mean, I felt like once I got into the league, I came in '07. Phoenix was always one of the top teams in the league. It only been a few years actually where they weren't one of the top teams. So they always had a solid team. Somebody always respected. And when you came in here, this was a battle. You know the crowd was going to be into it from the tip. And I think one of the best teams that, since I've been in the league was that team that didn't make the playoffs that were like 45 and 37, I think, with the Twins and PJ Tucker. I think that was one of the teams that really sold me on, like, all right, this is a destination to come play. This is a place that, they really get behind their team. So
KD putting it on real thick right now. KD didn't give a damn about Phoenix before they had Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Aiden, all these pieces in play. Kevin Durant wasn't worried about no Phoenix Suns, but of course he has to say that. He's a member of the Phoenix Suns now, and he's trying to get on their good side. He's buttering them up. This is the start of a new relationship, and I think it's gonna work out real well. This is a last second move. It's right before the trade deadline. They're only gonna have about 20 games together before the postseason starts. But like I said, I just think with Kevin Durant's skill set, they're going to be able to make it work. The Western Conference is wide open, and I just really like their chances to come out the West with if everything lines up well. I really like their chances. Josh Okogie is playing better. Damian Lee has shot the three ball well this year. Of course, getting Ross now. I think they'll be able to find a fifth guy who they can put in that lineup and just rely on. Somebody should be able to crack into that lineup and be the difference maker. Give them 5 guys that they can put out there and really just dominate the rest of the teams in this league. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to end the segment here. Thank you guys as always for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share the videos. Until next time, peace.